good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tamara Ecker, Managing Director of British American Business, which is the leading transatlantic trade association supporting businesses with operations both in the US and UK markets. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to today, which is the next iteration in our Power of Purpose series in partnership with our fantastic member, BrandPie. The Power of Purpose series explores the role of purpose in building and enhancing levels of engagement and motivation, and ways to embed purpose within business organizations to build stronger connections with people. Today, we are fortunate to have two incredible CMOs join us to discuss the intersection of purpose and business strategy. And to moderate today's discussion, it is my pleasure to introduce Mary Lee Sachs, founder and US CEO of BrandPie. Mary Lee has over 30 years of experience in international marketing communications. And although she is now based in New York, Mary Lee has spent significant time in Europe, leading international assignments for blue chip brands like American Express, P&G, and PepsiCo. So Mary Lee, a very warm welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Tamara. Thanks very much. Just a couple of house rules, if you will. We're going to be talking, and I'm going to be fortunate enough to be talking with our panelists for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to open the floor for some Q&A. So if you could just, if you have a question, if you could use the raise hand feature on Zoom to signal that you've got a question, then I will try and work my way around and give everybody the opportunity. If we don't get to everyone's questions, maybe we'll try and do that post-event. While you're not speaking, though, if you could keep your microphones on mute, we'd really appreciate it so we don't get any background noise. I'm delighted to have Rajashree and Iris with us to talk about purpose. They both come from very large purpose-driven organizations, and they know a lot about purpose and how purpose has how their organizations have intersected with purpose over the last few years. I'd like for each of them to introduce each other, and then we will go on with the panel. So Rajashree, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi, Mary. Thanks a lot, everyone, for having me here today. And I'm obviously joined by Iris, who's the CMO B2B for Vodafone, actually one of our clients as well. So I'm really proud to for her to join me here today.
Iris.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm indeed Iris Meyer, I'm the CMO of Vodafone Business, and really glad to be here. Purpose is a topic I'm very passionate about.
So this is going to be a great conversation. Mike Firm just launched its third annual CEO Purpose Report a couple of months ago, and there was some really telling aspects of the report this year. We expanded our geographic reach from UK, US, France, and Germany to include India and China. And it was a telling year for purpose, given the pandemic. It was an interesting time to be doing the research. And what we've seen is that purpose as a business concept has been building momentum, but last year really was a tipping point for purpose. We found that CEOs really are very firmly committed to purpose. Many of them, in fact, over a quarter of them said that it was the #1 factor in driving business growth. And those that didn't have a purpose in their organization, there were about 2/3 saying that that was something that they wanted to enact over the coming months. But it's often a balancing act. Purpose is seen as a long-term aspect or strategy, and many times CEOs have to have their eye on the short-term results. So it'd be really interesting to hear from you overall in your organizations, how you balance that with purpose in the organization. And Iris, I'm going to start with you, if I may.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, Mary Lee, you mentioned that last year was like a tipping point for purpose. And I think we might have even gone past the tipping point. What I see is that it's just all like leadership, employees, and customers all recognize that purpose is really a central pillar in success for brands. And in terms of the short term and long term, what I see it really features already in the buying journeys in the short term, but it's also absolutely important part of a strategy of an organization planning for the future. And you mentioned as well, and I do believe that COVID accelerated the change here as well. There's certainly growing demand for corporations to behave responsibly and really set an example and inspire governments and people to do better. I myself, I've been talking about these changing consumer demand already in 2018. But as you mentioned, some statistics as well, what we saw from our own research is that attitudes are really changing at board level. So hence, I think we are probably past the tipping point. For example, one of our research saw that 79% of businesses rated social responsibility as important. So it's just very encouraging, I would say.
Thank you. Rajashree, TCS is you've always been a purpose-driven organization, but you really brought that to the fore in the last 12 months. Maybe talk a little bit about how you're embedding purpose in the organization.
Mary, are you able to hear me clearly? I'm just getting some feedback. Okay, all right, that's good. Yeah, Mary, you're absolutely right. We have been very purpose-led right from the inception of our organization in 1968. As you know, we have the legacy of the Tata Group, which is really founded on some really deep purpose about helping the community that we serve. So that's always been our philosophy, right? But at the beginning, actually pre-pandemic, we really thought that it was important to have purpose like almost a war cry for the organization, something which brings all our employees together. We are an organization of 500,000 employees, which is really large, right? And as we grow bigger and bigger, what is it that really is going to bring our associates together? Because especially in a B2B business, they are the voice of the brand, they are the brand ambassadors, right? So we were always purposeful. What was important for us to articulate purpose in a way that everybody understands it and everybody is able to articulate it in a succinct manner. And that's what we really attempted to do in 2020. And of course, we worked with Brand 5 towards that. But that was really what we had attempted to do. It was a fantastic journey, and I think people loved it within our organization.
When it comes to navigating times of uncertainty, and obviously the pandemic was one of the most disruptive forces in recent history, purpose is really often seen as the North Star for an organization. In fact, in our study, 9 in 10 CEOs said that companies that had a purpose statement, it helped guide their business through the last 18 months. You both come from purpose-led organizations, and we can talk a lot about the enterprise level perspective on that. But as your chief marketing officers, I think we'd really like to hear about how purpose played a role in the marketing function. So Rajashree, do you want to kind of address that aspect? Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about the audio, these technical stuff sometimes. Anyway, I think what I really strongly believe is that especially in the pandemic, but even otherwise, there are two things which CMOs are responsible for, right? One is growth and other is culture, and especially in a B2B environment, right? We've all gone through difficult times from a business perspective, and obviously CMOs had to help the organization grow. But the second thing, which was, I feel, much more important, was bringing the organization together, both in context of our employees, but also in context of our customers. And I really felt that CMOs are custodians of that purpose, right? So while purpose is not a marketing activity or something for marketing, it's an organization-wide reason for why we exist as an organization. But I think marketing has a significant role to play to articulate it succinctly, communicate it succinctly, and make sure it's not a statement, it's not something we put up on billboards or annual reports, but it's something we live and breathe every day, right? So I think that's the role I personally feel responsible that I need to play for my organization. I have to make sure that we live our purpose, we are guided by our purpose, our decisions are guided by our purpose. And I really feel as the custodian of purpose for TCS. So that's how I look at it, especially in today's world.
Yeah. Iris, how have you enacted purpose within the marketing organization at Vodafone?
I think just looking at first broader, our role as Vodafone connecting people and businesses, it's always been vital. But you can imagine that when everything moved out of the offices and into the home, it was under the microscope like never before. So I actually feel that as a whole organization, keeping our purpose close really helped us when we needed to react very quickly to the challenges brought on by COVID in various parts of the organization and in marketing as well. There are several examples how we as an organization reacted. But if I take an example from the marketing side, and I'm sure we would all agree that COVID-19 really disproportionately affected small businesses throughout Europe and USA. So we, small businesses are very important customers for us, but it's also really the heartbeat of economy and society. So we took really committed steps and actions to help these small businesses. What we launched last year in the summer, just a couple of months after the pandemic truly started, is this free digital advisory service that we call VHub. It's really an advisory for small businesses around website construction, e-commerce, security, remote working, digital marketing, all different topics. We've done a lot of other steps as well to support small businesses, like free online event as well. But I say like the biggest challenge from a marketing perspective that the pandemic created is definitely our brand position. I don't know if you know, but our brand position last year in March was "The future is exciting, ready." And you can understand, as a purpose-driven company, that really hurt when all of a sudden the future was not exciting and nobody was ready for it. So it clearly was no longer appropriate. So we really had to adapt very fast. And we started to talk about Together Ready. And hence all the activities we did, for example, with the small businesses, was really encapsulating that. And now we did a lot of research as well, accelerated the program to change our brand purpose. And now we say Together We Can, which is really well aligned with our purpose and really is talking about human spirit. So that was kind of like a big challenge from marketing perspective.
A related question for Rajashree. Last year was a pivotal moment for TCS in terms of defining its purpose. What led the organization to be addressing that last year? Was it something that had been in the works, or did the pandemic kind of fuel that conversation?
That's a very interesting question, Mary. A lot of people ask me whether it was a response to pandemic, but it wasn't. So at the beginning of 2020, as the organization was growing and, as I mentioned, it was not about, it was more about finding the purpose rather than defining the purpose, right? If you look at two major stakeholder groups, one is customers and the other is employees, right? We have about 97% of repeat customer business, which is that our customers are coming back to us again and again to do business with us, and our attrition levels are lowest in the industry, right? Those are the two most important stakeholders. And when I took over as CMO, I felt that it was very important for us to be much more clear about articulating the purpose, right? If you walk around TCS, you'll find people who work for 20 years, 25 years. If it was not a purposeful organization, it wouldn't have possible. It's not possible for that to happen. So we started the journey before the pandemic, which is very interesting. And I think the lesson traveled, all the less travel and the time we saved actually helped us to accelerate it and focus on it in a dedicated manner. And, we rolled it out earlier this year. But I always keep saying that it was about finding our purpose or articulating our purpose rather than defining our purpose. Right. And for me, the greatest thing was, when I actually showed it to the tenured employees of the organization, I said, does it feel like TCS? Does this feel like something that resonates with you, right? And I got a resounding yes. And then we went to these real youngsters who joined us, I mean, I don't want to tell you their ages, but the real kids who've joined us. And I said, does this feel TCS to you, right? And thankfully, we got a resounding yes from both those groups, and that was very gratifying. And I think that's how we discovered it. That's how we found it, and now obviously we are living it every day of our life.
That's a great pivot for my next question, because I want to ask about talent. Finding and keeping the right talent is becoming a real challenge, especially given the new generation and what their expectations are of corporate life. And in fact, in our study, 37% of CEOs claim that attracting and retaining the right talent is one of their top priorities. So given that we all know that purpose can be inspirational for people, how has this played out? Iris and Vodafone, what role does purpose play out in terms of attracting and retaining the talent that you've got?
It's playing a very important role, even to the point that we use, for example, our core beliefs and behaviors. We call it the spirit of Vodafone. It's very aligned to our purpose. We use that as a part of a selection process in the initial screening and also in the interview stages when we are recruiting people, because it's really important for us that we align our beliefs and behaviors with those of the candidates wanting to join our company. But it's also these ongoing conversations with the team. I actually have this little, you probably don't see, little sticker with our spirit of Vodafone. For example, we earn customer loyalty, we create the future. And we use that in just day-to-day conversations, like we encourage the spirit behaviors, or we say, well, I don't think that's actually aligning with our spirit behaviors. It's really important for us. Also, of course, throughout the pandemic, listening to employees and really understanding their issues was part of the kind of like ensuring that you retain your people, but also act according to your purpose. And I think if I may, I think one thing what's really important for Vodafone and as part of our purpose is inclusion. For diversity and inclusion is really important for us. And I think if you consider inequality is really complex, and it is present at societal, sectoral, and organizational level. And I strongly believe that as a multinational company, we do have a role to play here and really addressing these through our scale and capabilities. So we do that both externally, but also internally when it comes to our own employees. So we are very committed to diversity and inclusion and have a lot of examples of kind of like externally facing campaigns, like we launched this sectoral level Change the Face campaign. That's really industry-wide initiative improving diversity and representation within the tech sector. But also, for example, within Vodafone, we have a lot of initiatives like Let's Talk About Race training, race fluency sessions. It's something very important for us, and we also measure it.
Cool. I'm going to come on to measurement in a little bit because I'm really interested in that as well. Rajashree, I noticed that you've got employees out there writing about your purpose, telling stories, writing poems, drawing pictures, being very creative. How has that come to be?
That was my goosebump moment, Mary. I actually got so many pictures and paintings, and you can see here, this is actually a painting which has been done by one of my, not my team member, but one of the TCSer who sent it to me. We've had cakes being drawn. You know, for me, again, purpose is not, I think I can see some comments as well as to how disconnected purpose can be to the real organization, right? That was actually the final proof that, you know, what we had put out there as a purpose was something every TCSer felt and, you know, lived it every day, right? So that was, I mean, every time I used to see that, you know, it was absolute goosebump moment for all of us here. And we have some, you know, Teams group with our leadership team where I would post all those poems and pictures and paintings and songs and cakes, which people made with the purpose statement. So there's nothing more gratifying than that, right? That it is actually something which was adopted by every employee of the organization. So that, and I hope for employees who come in as well, right? I mean, I think you spoke about talent. I mean, in tech world, talent is crazy right now. But every youngster today believes that the work they do, even if they're writing a piece of code, is something which is going to help the world in the future, right? That's really very, very important to a 22-year-old, 23-year-old who's passing out. So hopefully the purpose will actually help pull us some of that talent into the organization as well.
It's lovely to see all the creativity. It was quite amazing when I was looking at it all online. I'd like to kind of switch a little bit into the whole concept of sustainability. And I've had a couple of former panelists actually suggest that either the terms could be interchangeable, or perhaps purpose is taking over from sustainability as a larger conversation. Clearly, purpose and sustainability complement one another and have a positive impact on the company's bottom lines generally. In our study, 4 and 5 CEOs recognize that a company's purpose can help them make decisions that contribute to a more sustainable world. And the same number agree that purpose-driven companies are better at navigating a sustainable world. So how do you and your organizations view the relationship between purpose and sustainability? Rajeshri, I'm going to start with you.
Sure, Mary. When we designed the purpose statement, I remember all the discussions we had about, do we need to include sustainability in the purpose statement, right? But we felt that we should keep it a little bit more broad-based, because purpose can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, I'm going to be slightly cheeky here, but an organization could come and say, making money is my purpose. There's nothing wrong in saying that, right? You exist because you want greater return for the shareholders. I mean, to each their own, right? So we kept it a little bit open, and we felt that there were a lot of topics in the world which are going to be important, right? Equality, sustainability, diversity, healthier world, health for everybody. So there are so many of these topics which are going to be very critical as we look forward, to our world ahead. And we kept it slightly open, but sustainability is obviously very, very important part. And if you see that in our communication, if you see that we do talk about sustainability. And the other important thing was also to talk about shared purpose, right? So we said, not only do we have a purpose, but we also work with our partners and our customers to make their purpose come to life. And again, Vodafone might have a purpose, another client of ours could have another purpose. So I think purpose is more overarching. Sustainability is a very important component of it, but there are many others which are important as well. I personally feel health is going to be super important as we go ahead. I feel topics like, equality, diversity, these are going to be really, really important concepts as we go forward. So I feel purpose is more overarching, and sustainability is an important component of it.
Iris, how does it play out at Vodafone?
Yeah, so first of all, I would definitely agree. I think purpose is the overarching theme. They're very closely linked, though. I think what we saw already years ago is especially our bigger customers, they started to ask our own sustainability initiatives. So I think sustainability has been the kind of like way for companies to be a little bit more purpose driven, and it's been a first kind of like easier maybe way for them to talk about purpose. So we've seen already years for our bigger customers, even when we answer they want us to talk about our purpose and sustainability initiatives. It's really tied into this whole of our idea of together we can, and it's a challenge we all need to overcome together. As such, we do have a range of different initiatives, often also with our partners. But you can see this green background with our speech mark in red. We actually, 1st of July, the entirety of our European operations, so that means our mobile and fixed networks, our data centers, and our retail stores and offices, they are now powered by electricity from renewable sources. So Planet is one of our purpose pillars. This was absolutely a big step for us, and we actually brought the target date forward by several years. So it's really, really important for us. And again, I'm coming back to the point what I mentioned earlier, we measure this very, very strictly as well. But also from Vodafone Business perspective, we are emphasizing the way our technology and solutions can really help organizations save energy. So for example, now we have over 50% of our 123 million Internet of Things connections that are directly enabling our customers to reduce their own emissions. I do believe that there will be an increasing focus on these issues as customers choose between companies in the future, and consumers choose who to really buy from. And I'm a strong believer that companies that really demonstrate a commitment on purpose and sustainability will have rewards, will definitely have rewards.
So you brought it up twice now, measurement.
Sorry.
I think you've brought up the subject of twice now, measurement, metrics. I'm very curious, not just from a marketing perspective, but perhaps what the organization considers as it adopts purpose, as it uses purpose as its North Star. What are some of the ways that you measure the effect that purpose is having? Iris, I'm going to start with you since you've talked about metrics a couple of times.
Yeah, it's on top of my mind. I actually attended a meeting today that we were reviewing our purpose metrics, 2 A4s. So we do have a lot of metrics. Obviously, a lot of that is also like it's internal metrics. It's really important for us, but we do have public metrics as well. We take it very seriously, and we also welcome scrutiny because that's what you need to have. You need to be very open and transparent. So some examples, I think for us, we have goals around our citizenship as an organization. So we track purpose. For example, this recent commitment to renewable electricity, it's definitely falling into this category. Or then taking another example, actually, when it comes to our long-term incentives for our executive committee members and our senior leaders, as part of our ESG, environmental, social, and governance measures, we have purpose targets. For example, the number of women we have in our leadership. So we announced, I think it was 2015, that we aim to achieve 30% of women in leadership and management roles by 2020. So we actually hit this target 2 years of 2019, and now we are aiming for 40% by 2030. So there are different ways that we measure, as I mentioned, some are public and some are not. But also, I think what is really important, this from the marketing side, we do a lot of market research to understand how we are then doing and how our customers perceive us. Like I mentioned, the small and medium-sized businesses that have been really suffering, what we realize that they don't really necessarily always consider telecom operators as their partner. And we wanted to show them that it's part of our purpose. We want to be their partner. And hence we started to do these committed steps. I think the biggest kind of like thing is when you look into the effect of purpose is really the feedback you get. And I was actually recently, a couple of weeks ago, attending an industry event for advertisers and marketeers. And I was talking about some of the purpose-driven initiatives that we have been doing. And a couple of days after, I got this message from a Vodafone customer. And she said that she had not realized everything that we were doing as a business. And it gave her a sense of pride that her service provider is a force for greatness, not just good. And I think that's the best measurement you can get out of the effect on your purpose.
Great. Rajeshri, what about TCS?
Yeah, it's difficult to measure it. Let me first acknowledge it. It is a little bit complicated to measure it, but I'm going to sound a little bit repetitive here, but for me, it's really customer engagement metrics and employee engagement metrics, right? So for example, from an employee engagement perspective, what I've put together is an engagement metric system, right? Where we are really trying to measure, are we engaging with our employees effectively, and both ways, not just one-way communication, but also the communication that comes back to us, and how Chorus purpose is part of that communication, right? Instead of sending just letters about increments of salary hikes, but how much of that communication is around our purpose and our beliefs and all of that, right? So that is on the engagement with employees, which we are now very systematically measuring, like week on week, day on day. The other element is obviously customer engagement. And I really feel that is, again, we've put together a very systematic, I don't want to use the word dashboard, but a metric system whereby we are measuring how much are we engaging with our customers and how much is our purpose and brand part of that core engagement metrics with our customers. So we have, it's one of the things I'm proud of that has happened in the last 6 months, but now we have a very structured metric system which is measuring both employee and customer engagement, especially around core purpose and positioning.
Do you think that purpose has brought the corporate functions of marketing and HR closer together in your organizations?
Yeah, very much. At least in my case, HR and marketing work extremely closely, which is, I think, been a very good part of engagement. One of the things which happened was, with COVID raging, there was a lot of pressure on HR to manage the crisis, right? So we had, we were doing a lot of measures. We ran a very large vaccination program for TCSers across the world. So HR was actually really engaged in some of those things. And I think marketing really stepped in our organization to really bring the organization together during this time, and obviously used purpose as a very core element of that engagement. And they are my best friends in the organization. We just got a joint award actually just about 2 weeks back, where HR and marketing was awarded for really communicating in this in the last 12 months. So absolutely, I think sometimes we are at loggerheads, but I think there's a great case for organizations across the world to work a lot more closely.
Congratulations on the award. I have one last question, and I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience. One of the interesting things that came out of our study is around the idea that it can be challenging to activate a purpose, bridging the gap between defining a purpose and then actually activating it in the organization, both internally and externally. Sometimes CEOs are not really knowing what to do. In fact, 3 out of 5 who want a company purpose admitted that they were uncertain as to how to enact their purpose. Have you found this to be a hurdle? It doesn't sound like it's a hurdle in your organization, but maybe it would be helpful for our audience to understand who actually is the steward of the purpose in your organization, how it actually kind of comes to life. Iris, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about who is the steward. I think in the past, and I think we've referred to it as well, quite often brand was owned by like company's brand person. It was considered a little bit of soft value. I think, as I mentioned, I think the world is changing, and the world is really starting to recognize the correlation between profit and purpose, actually. But I don't think there's one certain function, a role who is the steward. I actually truly believe that we all have a role in building a purpose-led company or society, and really ensuring we keep the trust of our customers as well. I joined Vodafone just over 3 years ago, and one of the reasons I joined the company is because it's very purpose-driven, and I think we haven't had a problem, absolutely not, to activate purpose, and the senior leadership is definitely behind it. I think we have even almost the other side of the problem, that everybody is so driven to act on purpose that we have probably too many initiatives sometimes. So, but I'd rather have that, because I think it's every single person in the organization that really need to embody the purpose of the company.
Okay, Rajashree, how does it work at TCS?
Yeah, I remember when we were doing this, there were, we used to discuss change management a lot. And I think the genesis for how we went about it was really how we did the process, right? So when we did the purpose statement, there was 2 clear things. One is we wanted it to be very organic. We didn't want to create something which was, sort of foreign to the organization. So the process involved nearly 2,500 employees that we interviewed, again, from a cross section of age, gender, geography, and all of that. And it was not something the board decided or the executive team decided, oh, this sounds great and this is the purpose. It was very organic. We actually interviewed about nearly 150, 200 of our clients who participated in the entire purpose journey. So it was so homegrown and organic, right? So when we released it, as I keep saying that, I don't know if it's believable, but people actually related to it very, very quickly. And I was very scared that, we'll have to do explanations and put out, documents and presentations. But actually, when we put it out there, people understood it and got it very, very quickly. And, they started interpreting it in all different ways. And it was extremely organic. So I think the process really helped us. So when it actually came out, it wasn't foreign, it wasn't something which was top down, it wasn't something, my organization really became the facilitator for, sort of bringing it together. But there were so many other stakeholders in the company who came together to bring that to life. So actually change management was really simple. I mean, it was almost like they were waiting for it to happen.
So the message for those reticent CEOs out there should be, don't let the potential activation worry you, that everybody will get on the bandwagon if you're true to your purpose and if you have the right DNA in place. I'm going to open up for questions, and I'm going to actually, there's a couple things in chat. Duncan, can I call on you to talk about this article in the FT that you referenced?
Yeah, it was just for reference, really. I saw this piece this morning. It was an opinion piece in the FT, actually talking about values rather than about purpose. And this is something that the FT has covered over many years, the kind of the generic nature sometimes of kind of corporate language. And the story was, I've put a link in the chat, but the story was suggesting that the language around values that companies are using in their kind of websites, in their company reports and so on, continues to be very generic and ill-defined, slightly kind of waffly and fluffy. And I'm just curious, I completely understand that kind of values and purpose are different, although they're connected, of course, but is there an element of truth to this kind of implied criticism that there's a little bit of kind of guff and waffle in some of the language being used? I'm sure not by the two companies represented here, but I'd just be curious about your opinion. Thank you.
Duncan, I can try to answer that question. So I actually agree with it in some sense, right? So what we have done is we have defined a reason for why we exist as an organization, right? Which is what we define as purpose. But we have also defined, values. So we've actually defined 4 values we're not calling it values, but they are values. So we've actually defined 4 values as to how do we make that purpose come to life? So, which is very interesting. So, you can't just put out a statement and say, what is it about us, which actually makes it, how do you realize that purpose? So actually it's a very interesting thought, but we have actually done that. And it actually, again, came very organically. So when we were doing this, we had all these values which people were articulating, employees, customers, and we felt it was important for us to actually put that out as well. So we have 4 values as well, which is actually part of our sort of our purpose structure. So I think there is some truth in what you're saying.
Yeah, I think, Duncan, I haven't read the article. I've read similar articles, whether it's I'm talking about companies' values or even, green claims and purpose. There's a lot of WAF and I can't say that we are perfect, like no company is perfect. I'm sure we have done and still by accident do in the future as well. What I think is really interesting, I'm originally from Finland, so I'm a little bit cynical to, in general, companies' purpose and values and behaviors. And I guess these 3 years at Vodafone, I'm completely swept. And but what's been interesting to me is like we don't talk about necessarily our values or behaviors externally, because those are internally, and those are indeed, I agree with you, Rachi, very related to purpose. But for us, it's more important that we live those values and behaviors rather than talk about it externally, because in the end of the day, it should be coming through our actions rather than us saying, oh, it's really important for us to earn customer loyalty. We want to do that in our actions rather than state that. So I think we are on our journey, but I would say there are some positive signs that we are really living and our purpose and our values, but it's tough. It's never easy.
And by the way, I mean, the FT is provocative deliberately. I mean, it's doing this because
it's good.
That's its purpose.
There you go. There you go. We have a question from Joanna Seddon. I'd like to call on her, if I may.
Okay. I actually wrote down 7 questions, but I'm just going to give you one. But before that, there's just a comment on what you were saying about purposes being generic, and they are, especially when they're not really real. They're just like what I would call purpose washing. But just a thought for you, which is, does it matter if a purpose is generic? If a purpose, as Rajeshri said very eloquently, a purpose is why we exist. And if you're a company in healthcare, maybe you all exist to make people healthier. Is there anything wrong with that? So that's not my question. I was just sort of as a contribution. My question for you two is, you talk very eloquently about your purposes. What have you changed in the business as a result of, really articulating your purpose?
Yeah, maybe I'll start, Joanna. It's a really good question. And I think that is something that's really important for us. And I could give you a lot of examples. I think what we have changed is just how we operate. I mentioned about this turning green. So we are actually really trying to operate in a more green way and not just state that planet is really important for us. But also when it comes to our customer interactions, I think we are much more purpose-led in that one as well. Throughout the pandemic, we were, for example, helping kids that were homeschooled to have them so that they have connections. In UK alone, we provided connection to over 500,000 kids. So I think we try to really actively change the things we do to be more purpose-driven and really live our purpose as well. But definitely also how we operate.
Sure. Joanna, thanks for the input and the question. I'm going to tell you what I've actually done. I don't know if this sounds, right, but I'm just going to tell you what we've done. So even when we were developing the purpose, it was very clear. I remember having a lot of conversations with Brand Pi. They asking this question. So how are you going to behave differently? How are things going to be different? And I kept saying that, no, I'm not becoming somebody else. I'm just finding the right articulation to say, to articulate our purpose, right? So I was very clear it was about finding a purpose rather than, doing the new purpose of, discovering a new purpose. So to that extent, we are just continuing to behave the way we are because our purpose, I feel, adequately reflects who we are as an organization. And I don't know if it's the answer people are expecting, but this is really what's happening here. But the one thing we have done from a marketing perspective, and I know there are some questions on, I see a lot of comments which says, if you're really living your purpose, why do you need to develop a purpose statement? But when you are a 500,000 employer among the top 10 employer in the world, it is very important that we all communicate in a very consistent manner. So what we've done is we've actually developed a lexicon, or what we call a vocabulary of how we want to articulate, our values, our purpose, our positioning, which can work in an external media, but can also work in individual meetings, individual, presentations, and so on and so forth. So not really change fundamentally the organization, but really try to make sure that we are actually, talking about the purpose and the positioning and the values in a much more consistent manner.
So you haven't made any major changes in the business like Unilever has, for example, saying we're going to disinvest and get rid of sell companies and businesses that don't fit with our purpose, and we're going to focus on investing in our, sustainable living companies. So you haven't done,
we haven't done that, because even in our history, we have always taken those choices, Joanna. We've always worked with, we've decided to not work with certain industries, or exit certain businesses, or not operate in a certain way because it didn't fit with our purpose. So we've continued on that journey this year.
Tamra, would you like to ask the question about how HR and marketing work together, how they collaborate?
Yeah, and I think we touched on this a little bit, but this is not a new theme, and it's something we run these sort of smaller forums, both for marketing executives and for HR executives. And it's interesting as we talk to both groups that there's so much overlap in the content and the themes of the conversation. And Rajeshri, as you were kind of talking about being responsible for both growth and culture, and that your stakeholders are, employees and clients. I'm just wondering what the, I think you spoke to this a little bit already, but what the collaboration looks like, and how you work together, and are the lines now being blurred a little bit in a good way?
Yeah, I talk to the HR teams every day, so that's the way of working together. But so there are ways you can look at your employees, right? You can look at your employee. I mean, I think this is a little bit true of B2B world as well, because today our employees are our biggest brand ambassadors. They are meeting our clients every day. I can put out any ad, any campaign, any statement, but if our employees don't communicate that on the ground when they're meeting their customers every day, this cannot work, right? So for me, the employees are my biggest vehicle for marketing, if I can be, if I can say that. And therefore, being able to communicate to them becomes very, very important, and making sure our culture reflects who we are, all of those things become important. But collaboration is every day, Tamra. So we collaborate on all aspects. I'll just give you one small example. When, we were a I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen our offices, but we have these grand offices with 30,000 people, 40,000 people. And, we used to meet each other all the day. And then one fine week, we are all remote, right? The entire organization is remote. It became very, very difficult for us to stay connected in this world. And we launched, along with HR, actually, it was a joint initiative, something called a One TCS channel, where every week, it's almost like a television radio station, where every week we do programs on everything from health to entertainment to astrologers. And it's a joint program that we did to actually bring our employees together. When we had this real hard lockdown in India, for a few weeks back, we realized everybody was sitting over the weekend at home, not knowing what to do. So we actually launched something called Weekend Program, where we had, musicians and entertainers who came and performed for the organization. So it was a joint initiative. So I think the collaboration has to be every day, all the time. It can't be like one fine day you put up a joint presentation together, but you have to speak to the CHRO like every day. That's the only way to work.
Thank you. No, that's really insightful. Yeah, Iris.
No, Tamra, I was just like, and I fully agree everything with Rajeshri said, and I think HR and marketing work very closely together. I'm not sure if necessarily just on purpose. So I think when it comes to purpose, I think purpose really needs to be, even when it comes to actually company culture, it needs to be wider than just HR or marketing. We have our leaders, like my boss, who is the CEO of Vodafone Business. He's actually responsible, or our executive sponsor for diversity and inclusion. So I think it needs to really cut across the whole company. but obviously it's very important for marketing and HR to work together. But what I agree most with Rajashree is that your employees, they are the one, if they live and breathe the purpose, you don't need any marketing to talk about your purpose.
Great. We have a question from Anthony Madigan. Anthony?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Mary-Lee. And actually, it's related to something that Iris just mentioned there. Purpose is very important, but if you like, it's something that doesn't change very much. At least it ought not to change very much. But the story, the narrative around it actually really should a lot, much like a long-running TV drama. The main character's purpose stays broadly the same, but the story you're telling around the challenges and all of that would change. How has having a strong purpose influenced the way that communication works, both with employees, with customers in the marketplace, with investors, and all of that? Because that really should be something that is evolving all of the time.
Oh, absolutely. I love your question, Anthony. I mentioned about our brand position and how we actually had to change that. And I'm not saying that the future is exciting ready. That was part of our purpose before, but it needed to change, and the tone needed to change because of the pandemic and also the overall trend. So then we changed to Together We Can. But how it really translates, it is indeed a story or narrative that needs to be every single person telling it. And what I love most is, I think it was a couple of months ago, I had this internal webinar with our Vodafone Group CEO, Nick Reed. And just before that, we were talking about this new brand promise and brand positioning. And he said to me, to your point about the investors, he said to me, I love talking to our investors now because it's really clear what is our brand position, and it's so tightly linked to our purpose. So it's much easier to have these discussions. So it really needs to be with all of your stakeholders. And I agree with you. I think the purpose stays, but the narrative, it does change according to also what's the overall environment.
Yeah, Anthony, a great question and a great comment. I completely agree with you. I'll give you, so when we're doing the purpose statement, I was actually inspired by an interview I watched with a musician where he said, when you write a song and you put out a song, you have to sing it 1 billion times, right? Imagine John Lennon singing Imagine 1 million times. And how can you do something which doesn't get bored? You can get bored of it, right? Talk to any iconic rock group, they'll say, oh, we hate this song because we sing it in every contest, but they always nuance it, right? Depending on where they're performing, whether it's an arena or a stadium or a small audience. And for me, that was the most inspiring. And I kept thinking to myself, can I say this every day? Can it be said in every context? Can it work in a closed door meeting? Can it work in a large environment? Can it work in a town hall? So I was very inspired by that quote. And I thought about all those iconic songs and how many times did Lionel Richie have to sing Hello, right? So in his life. And I think that's true for purpose. They live forever and they have to remain fresh, and they have to have that expandability to it so that, we can use it in environments that we live and breathe every day. So I completely agree with you.
Good answers, thank you.
Love the music analogy. We would always advocate for ruthless consistency to make sure that everything's getting across. But I think it's a really good point about how the narrative underneath that has to change given what's happening in the times. Are there any other questions from folks? Just want to make sure that I'm giving everybody a chance to speak out. If not, then I think I might pass back to Tamra. And before I do, though, I would just like to say a huge thank you to Rajashree and Iris for joining us this morning. It's been a great conversation, and I've really enjoyed hearing what you both have to say about purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We've got lots to discover as we go along. So I don't want to stand here saying, oh, we've figured everything out. I would probably be an audience in your next event and learn maybe 1 million things more about how to do this better. But we're really happy to be here and share some of our experiences and thoughts. Thank you so much.
Likewise, I think we learn every day.
Thank Thank you.
Well, on behalf of British American Business, please let me echo Mary Lee's thanks to Rajeshri and Iris, and of course, Mary Lee, to you and the entire team at BrandPie. This was such an incredible conversation, and I think important to note as well that these are lessons and ideas that are applicable not only to large corporations like TCS and Vodafone, but to small and mid-sized businesses, and even to a nonprofit organization like British American Business. I certainly have a few takeaways that I would like to try and implement myself. So huge thanks to all of you, and to all of you for joining us today. We have some more programming on for tomorrow, and then we'll break for the summer. So wishing all of you a very good August, and see you again in September. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Bye.